Hey, I just there's one of these cards that doesn't have a question; it just has a comment, and it's and I think it's worth saying. It says, "You guys are lucky to have each other." And here's a deep one. You know, we have a section in this film that's all about death, as you saw, and it's pretty, you know, it's pretty heavy stuff. I think it's maybe the strongest part of the film because I think it's very real. This one is for Bart. What goes through your mind when you think about your dad dying?
I get sad. I mean, I think it's funny. One of my closest friends from boyhood is here tonight, and we grew up together. And his father loomed very large in all of his friends' lives. You know, he was that kind of dad that we all knew and thought was awesomely cool. And he died very young. And whenever I think of my friend Rock, I think of him as being fatherless because his dad was so central. And there's never a conversation that we ever have that his dad doesn't still come up in. And and as I was saying at the end of the movie, you know, like my dad is, you know, in everything. It's just the way I talk. It's just the way I am. And so when I think about my dad dying, it makes me profoundly sad, and it makes me profoundly determined to pick up the phone that day and make that call and not let that day slip away. And I would say that we talk on the phone or visit much more than many of my believing friends do. And sometimes I wonder if the reason they're able to be so casual about their parents is because they're so confident that they'll have eternity to spend together. And I think maybe one of the reasons I'm so desperate to not let a day go by without being sure that you know that we're cool is because I'm aware that there's a limited number of days for us. Yeah.
Two things. When a loved one dies, you weep. But I like what the Apostle Paul writes. We do not weep as those who have no hope. There's a difference when you're a person of faith. For your weeping is permeated with hope. I love what it says in Hebrews, the 11th chapter, the first verse. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I wonder what the future holds. I am confident that Jesus is there waiting. And I hope that reality becomes something that's true for you as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking, a friend of mine was here who was a friend of Ray's, my cousin Ray. And when my cousin Ray died, he died very, very young. And I remember being in the hospital with his mom when they unplugged him from the machine and just desperately wanting to believe I would see him again. And I was thinking about that because one of my favorite writers is this guy named Robert Ingersoll, who's known as the great agnostic from the 1890s. And he said that the hope of eternal life was not born of any creed or any religion. It was born of human love on facing death. It was just that whenever a loved one dies, what he said it wasn't Christianity that invented eternal life. It was the desire for eternal life that creates the need to come up with a way of believing that I'll see you again. And I just think the most natural thing in the world, as far as I'm concerned, is to hope that there's more than this. It doesn't make it true, but boy, I can't imagine why somebody wouldn't hope that when they love somebody and they lose them.
That Ingersoll book was the one sitting on the table in front of you, by the way, opposite your dad's Bible in the film. Throughout that conversation, you had the Bible and you had Ingersoll.
Once again, these stories circulate and you never know whether they really happen. Incidentally, they had the pulpit in the Hall of Philosophy at the Chautauqua.
Yeah.
You spoke at Chautauqua,
Yeah.
stood behind that rostrum. I spoke there, stood behind that rostrum. So did Robert Ingersoll. As a matter of fact, when he spoke at Chautauqua, he would take out a watch and said, "If there's a God, may he strike me dead in the next 30 seconds." And he would hold the watch up. And at the end of the 30 seconds, he'd put the watch away and mock those who believed. The one story I wanted to tell you was that when he died, once again, I don't know whether this really happened, I can't prove it, that someone his chauffeur went in and looked at him laid out in the casket, all dressed up in a tuxedo, and said, "Poor Bob, all dressed up and no place to go."